am excited and honored to welcome our guest today. WAG magazine calls her a heroine, not just of every woman, but of every one. Hit by downsizing in a digital age, she not only continues working, but she is flourishing, living a life doing work she loves. She is a renowned American editor, author, a media entrepreneur, and most notably, founder of CoveyClub. Fulfilling her passion and purpose to lead and coach bright, bold women on how to effectively reinvent themselves, CoveyClub is not only a women's club for lifelong learners, but also an online community where women come to connect, bond, and attain breakthroughs in their lives and businesses. Here is where women pull up a chair for coffee and conversation at one or several of CoveyClub's webinars, or they can grab some insight and inspiration from the CoveyClub blog, where a variety of topics are written and produced by the best journalists from around the world. You can also tune into the CoveyClub podcast and app titled Reinvent Yourself, where women connect for thought-provoking conversations every week. And be assured you will always be directed to sources that are well worth your time and continued learning. And welcome, Lesley Jane Seymour.
Thank you, Jane. That was such a good intro. I'm going to steal it and use it as an ad. That was great. That was way better than I could come up with.
Thank you. Thank you. You can have it. It's all you. Now, because you have made such a bold and gutsy shift from corporate to entrepreneur, I just wanted to highlight a few of the accomplishments and where you come from to give our audience an idea of the ginormous shift you have made, which is so inspiring. So you were editor-in-chief of Marie Claire, during which the magazine was nominated for a 2006 National Magazine Award. Later, you were named editor-in-chief of More magazine, one of my favorites. And during which time, yeah, it's a shame it's gone, but it's still around in different ways. So during which time the magazine was named to Media Week's 2010 Hot List and dubbed the Vanity Fair for women by marketers. While you were editor-in-chief of More magazine, former First Lady Michelle Obama guest edited the July-August issue and was the first lady to do so. Not to mention being the senior editor of Vogue and editor-in-chief of many other women's magazines. So what a stellar career you've had and continue to have. And now you've switched gears to become a full-fledged entrepreneur and owning that role in your 60s, which I absolutely love and admire. So here's my first question. What was it like making that leap?
Well, as I like to say to everybody, I was pushed. It was not, it was not a voluntary leap, though the difference was I decided not to go and do more of the same. The publishing business had really changed a lot, and it used to be a crazy, fun, wackadoodle business where every week you were selling more magazines and you were hiring new people and executing on new ideas and having fun, and you could build a team. And what had happened about 15 years ago, it had turned a corner and was going in the other direction. And the business all became about firing people, downsizing, asking people to do 3 jobs for the same price, giving no one raises. And it got to the point where I had a business, our business manager, who was a single mom, came to me one day when we were thinking of actually maybe getting raises. And she said to my managing editor, "Don't give me a raise because I don't want my salary to be so high that they'll cut me." And I thought, this business has a cancer. I mean, for people to proactively come in and say, "I don't want to get an increase even though I deserve it because I'm afraid I'm going to be pushed out." This is not the way to run a business. So it was very clear to me that I didn't want to do this anymore, even though I loved it. I mean, no regrets, just amazing fun. I mean, someday I'll tell you all the crazy, really like things that you would never believe that I did.
We'll make a book out of it.
I'll make a book.
Okay.
But the pivot, I really had to figure out what am I going to do next. Luckily, I knew that the business was in trouble. You could see that if you read any kind of, business book or newspaper. They were firing people, 400 people at a time at Time Inc. across the city. So you didn't have to be a brain surgeon to say, my business is in trouble. Should I think about something else? I had actually gone back to Columbia to pursue a degree, master's degree in sustainability management, because I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was in my 20s, but my writing took over and I went in other directions, which was great.
Right.
And so while I was doing that at the same time that I was trying to think about, how long can I hold on in the publishing business long enough to get my degree. And then I thought I would pivot into the beauty business, which needs a lot of help in the sustainability area. And then they pulled the plug on more 2 years before I actually thought they would. And so I was halfway through my degree, out of a job, and had to decide what I was going to do. The big surprise was my readership coming to me and saying, this is outrageous. We're really upset. There's nothing for us. Can you do something like it in an entrepreneurial way? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never been an entrepreneur. I am a corporate cog. I have no idea what you're talking about. So I said, I like to research. So I made a survey, and I got 627 people to take 54 question survey to the end, which is impossible today. People won't answer 2 questions.
Right.
And I literally took what these women said and I mapped it out, and I made a business off of that. And I've had a pivot. That was 2 years ago. I have had a pivot several times. That first map was not exactly what it is. It had the feeling of it, kind of, but not quite. And so we keep pivoting and keep changing and keep moving towards what the consumer really wants. And it's the spirit of more. I mean, what you have to realize is that magazines were, in my opinion, were about decreasing isolation, informing, and gathering a community of types.
Yes. It
was just done on paper. That was the way we did it, right? So now CoveyClub is just doing that, but live. We have digital content. We have virtual events. Now we're running 5 a week, which are fantastic. They're like this, where I bring people to interview and actually instruct in various areas. And the irony is during the pandemic, because everybody was locked in at home, my business got better.
Yes.
Which is because people are pulling their hair out going, how am I going to improve myself? And how am I going to create community? And how am I going to see my friends? And I'm feeling isolated. So bizarre turn of events, strange, could never plan it. We actually have found our market fit in the pandemic. And I laugh and I say that's because we had a captive audience. But the idea is to keep that audience, whether it's captive or not, as we move forward into the opening up. But we now know what people really want, and we now have some people who are really dedicated to what we do, and now we can take that beginning idea and keep pivoting to get us to where we want to be. But it's the same concept as a magazine. It's just not print.
Paper.
Right, it's not paper.
Right. Yeah. No, right. I mean, it's interesting because you're absolutely right. And coming from that industry, I mean, let's face it, the future is online. I mean,
oh, totally. It's just not going back. I mean, I know. Sad. It just won't.
I know, because I do still love magazines myself. I love to look at the pictures and turn the page, and I still buy
You'll have a few. Yeah, you'll have a few like that. But books, big coffee table books can solve that problem. And
right.
The business has just changed so much. And what I hear from insiders now is after the pandemic, a business that was, in slow decline and they thought they were going to sort of manage the decline fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
So
well,
I'm glad I'm not there.
Yeah. I was going to say, in a way, the timing was almost perfect. So
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, like as I said to you, I apologize for being in my workout gear, but this is what I've learned about being a entrepreneur is if you on your workout day as an entrepreneur, if you get dressed and put makeup on and do your hair, you will never work out that day.
Yeah.
So what you do is you get up and you get into your workout gear, and then you're guaranteed that you will do it. There is all different ways of running your life as an entrepreneur
No,
than
in fact,
going into the
have that.
city.
I have that later on because I think you covered that in one of the CoveyClub blogs and so on and so forth. So it's interesting that you said that.
Mm-hmm.
Experiencing such big changes in one's life and career can be challenging, to say the least. And there's probably a lot of women that are going through that right now, especially
Huge.
these unprecedented times. Like you said, they feel
Huge.
isolated, but many of them now are working from home when they never had that opportunity, and they're actually reassessing. Do I really like this job I was doing?
Right.
Do I really want to go back? Or they're had a business, or they're thinking of doing a business because now they have the space to actually open that possibility. So what advice would you give other women going through the same thing right now?
Well, I think number one is you have to be savvy about your finances, and you cannot make a leap like this if you've not thought about it and put away for it. I did put away for it. I knew this was coming. Mm-hmm. It was obvious. My industry was in distress. I mean, you didn't have to be a brain surgeon to know that. So I squirreled away a bunch of money. I squirreled away money to go back to school at the same time. And I said, I'm going to take my severance pay and I'm going to use it towards a new business, whether it be in I thought it was going to be in sustainability or whatever I was going to do. You cannot just fall off that cliff with nothing in your pocket. So, first you have to take care of your finances. And once you get to that, then you really need to do a lot of research into what you think about. We do a lot of this at Covey. You have to do your personal branding work. You have to take your idea and see if it is an idea. You have to figure out how to research it. You have to figure out how to create marketing for it. You have to figure out whether you are the type of personality that likes to be an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. It's not for everybody. It's really tough. Mm-hmm. It's not, if you are, the thing I miss the most is having my team. I don't have a team. I mean, I've assembled a team in the last 2 years, but in the beginning I was like sitting at my coffee table by myself, and for 2
lonely,
years,
doesn't it?
It's horribly lonely, which is why. Well, that was the main reason why I didn't go back to being a writer. I love to write, but it's so solitary. I hate being a writer because you are literally so isolated. I am an uber extrovert. So I said, okay, I don't want to do that again. So let me try to create this business. Now, it took 2 years, a year and a half to get it off the ground and launch it. And that first year and a half, I was as lonely and isolated as a writer. You're just pushing that brick up a hill and you have no idea what you're doing. Now it has its own momentum. It has its own, we have a little bit of a team. We have people we interact with. We have sponsors. It now feels more like a community we're building. We have a lot of people who've come back who, it's starting to feel like community, but it's not for everybody. A lot of people said to me, oh, you had such a stellar reputation. People really thought highly of you. And you've done all these amazing things with Michelle Obama, traveled the world with her, and that issue that you're talking about, that made history because no sitting first lady. Pardon me? Oh, yeah. That was no sitting first lady had ever done it. Well, it was one of those kind of, I always ran these things when I was at Mary Claire called crazy idea meetings. And I used to say to people, come to the meeting with your craziest idea. Don't worry about how much it costs. Just throw the idea out there. I'll tell you whether we can figure it out or not. Like if you want to have Mary Claire painted on the back of an airplane, I want to know about it, right? Right. So that was always my way of getting at new ideas. Mm-hmm. And so when we had run Michelle 3 times in a row, it came to the 4th time. She was always a bestseller. And I went to her PR person or communication person. And I said, I feel like we've done everything we can do. We need to do something really different and really off the wall and really, that really breaks boundaries. I said, I don't know if you're going to want to do it. And she's like, oh, well, you never know. Hit me with it. We go out to lunch. I was really afraid to ask her because I was sure she would say no. And when she said yes, I was like, pinching myself. I was like going, did you just say yes to this? She goes, oh, I'll bring it to her. Let me see. This was something on our list we were thinking of doing. And I think you're the right person to do it with because you have a lot of integrity. And I remember calling my publisher. Publishers happen to be in general big mouths. You have to be very careful. And I said to her, you are not allowed, you cannot breathe this to your husband because they're going to change their mind. Like, this is such big news. You're never going to, like, this has never been done before. And she kept it under her hat. And indeed they went for it and they went through with it. It was you know, it was the apex of my career. I mean, I remember she came and spoke to us at the museum. It was 150 people, you know, from my magazine and sponsors and blah, blah, blah. And we also happened to have Robin Wright, who had played the First Lady on House of Cards. So she was introducing Michelle, and it was because this issue went around the world, and it got something like 6.5 billion with a B hits. Because it was just so huge. And we're standing behind, waiting to go on stage. And I got the two of them back there right behind me as I'm about to announce them. And the two of them are giggling and they're going, oh, this is so much fun. And I just went like, I'm done. I'm done. Like, the First Lady and then this wonderful actress are back here telling me how much fun and how excited they are about my event. I'm done. Like, what else can I do? I'm done. Like, this is over. So that kind of, you know, it's kind of like your wedding. You like, no, you got to move on. There's got to be something else you're going to do. And so when the readers came to me, I made a map, and I took that map and I cut it up and I did minimal viable product. And I did a couple of pivots on that. I went out there with a content only thing that failed. And then I came back and I moved it more towards the club. It was always called a club, but I didn't know what that meant. I just knew in my gut it had to be a club, and just kept moving it. And, you know, again, as I said to you, in the pandemic, just before the pandemic, I was getting tired of the old editing thing. And I was getting, it's so labor intensive to do the kind of editing we do. We don't do, you know, there's thousands of people who write me every day. They want to, you know, post about a sleeping mattress. You know, it's like, we don't do that. There's a lot of people who take that stuff. We're real journalists. It's a lot of labor and there's not a lot of return on it. So I was just like, oh, I'm getting tired of doing 5 of these a week. I think it's too much. Let's pull back. I don't see the return, the difference in, you know, 30,000 uniques a week versus 50 is not, it's just not that much. We're not talking about moving to 1 million. So, you know, like, what's the difference? We're killing ourselves and what's the point? And I'm not enjoying it. But what I really love are the events. And I love the live events. We took 60 ladies to Savannah, which is a resort and spa out in Phoenix, and that was fantastic.
My backyard.
2 times in a row. Oh, well, you have to come. When we were supposed to do it again this year, but all been put off. So our live events are extraordinary and really fun. And so we had to go virtual in the pandemic. And we'd always been doing virtual events, which were kind of like stage ideas. Like, I would get an expert and I would interview them, but it was kind of live so people could ask questions. And then I had a few people, because I didn't want it to be too corporate. So I had a few people come on and they started, they're just were front seat drivers. And they were like, I have a presentation. So I'm like, okay, like, I have no idea if they're going to like this. I thought maybe they wouldn't, because I didn't want it to be like a send mode. And it just so happened that these 2 people were fabulous and they loved what they were doing. And at the 40-minute mark, where I usually come in and there's questions, I said, do you want me to let you ask questions? They're like, no, let her go. We love this. I was like, okay.
We don't want you here.
No, shut up. Go away. Just let her present. And so now we're doing more of a combination of those 2 things. And
that's
so
wonderful. Yeah. And that'll all come back. You know.
Oh, yeah.
That'll all come back. But of course, so what I heard, and that was one, I mean, I loved, you know, we got into that Michelle Obama, because I really, you know, for me, I'm all about brainstorming and taking people out of reality, because that's when they can really open up to creativity. But going back to the original question, so what I heard is, do your homework.
Oh, yes.
Women.
Yes.
Be aware that it's not for everyone, and that's okay too.
That's okay. You have to know whether you're that personality or not. It could drive you totally crazy if you're not that personality. And I'm not really, but I've always been somebody who can go back and forth between being independent and being in a corporation.
Right.
You know, I like both, so I'm fine with that. And, you know, as you get older, I will be honest, it is a hell of a lot nicer not to worry about ageism,
Mhm.
not to worry about, all these things that I see my friends who are still in corporate life have to worry about. And I'm glad I don't have to do that.
Yeah, yeah, there are advantages and there are disadvantages. So how did my next question is, how do you find being your own boss?
Oh, I've always been my own boss. I'm highly motivated. I think it's very irritating to my husband. I get up in the morning, I'm ready to go. I have to, I have to, I have to have a goal every day.
Okay.
That's just who I am. So that's not a problem. The problem for me was the isolation. And,
Okay.
but the organization of your own life is very, very hard when you're used to executive life, where somebody else was organizing all your life. I mean, like stupid stuff, like one of the biggest revelations after 6 months of struggling, how do I get all this done in the week, which is all just one blur of emptiness? Like there was no, in corporate life, you have
Mhm.
Wednesday
Routine.
reporting meetings, and you have routines, you have blocks that you do. And a good friend of mine, it's just such a no duh, like, really, you didn't think of this? She said, you go into your calendar and you mark out Friday is editing day for these 4 hours. And then you just mark out Thursday is marketing. And then I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah.
That's so brilliant. And then I went in there and I did this with my digital calendar, and suddenly I had time and space to do. It wasn't just this mishmash of, I was living outside of New York City at that time, and I would run into the city for a lunch and then come back and do interviews and then run, it was just this horrible herky jerky and so then I was just like, okay. And what they told me to do too is, phone calls only in the afternoon or only in the morning. When is your energy up? Or you're only going to go into New York for lunch, every other day. You're not. And so once you create that kind of structure to
That's
your
it.
life,
Structure. Mm-hmm.
it's very, very helpful if you're used to having a very structured corporate life, because it's
Yeah.
really difficult in the beginning. You're not used to creating structure.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
hard.
But I think that's great advice, because you're right. When we start to work for ourselves, people tend to get haphazard because something happens over here and you feel you have to do it there, and then something over here grabs your attention. So I have to do that. And then before you know it, a month is gone and you're like scattered and stressed. And so having a plan for your day, for your week, for your month it's really
literally blocking it out.
a must have.
And then also learning how to manage your email, which sounds so stupid,
Yes.
but it is such.
Yep.
I'm still getting there with it. We've done some great pieces on the Covey site, which are all about this, about organizing yourself, because it is so hard just to get through your stupid email. Sometimes people send me things, I can't even find it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because it's all coming into one stream, even if you have different boxes, it's
Right.
this vertical fire hose of garbage. And, there's just all kinds of organizational things that you need to do to be able to get yourself through the day in a way that feels constructive.
Right.
There's a lot of reading you can do. There's a lot of coaches sometimes help too, if you really have trouble with that. I was never a big coaching fan, but now that I've been in the entrepreneurial world for a while now, I think coaches can be really helpful.
Yeah. So that's good advice. So get your day planned and your week and your month, and don't be afraid if you need help in certain areas to get a coach.
Yes.
Because they can be very helpful.
Yes. And they're really, and you can find a coach for almost every single thing.
Yeah. Today.
You just have to do your research.
Yes.
We have a bunch of coaches that we're bringing into Covey as our coaches, because they're people
that's wonderful.
we've worked with. Yeah, because I mean, coaches vary so heavily in terms
Mm-hmm.
of what their real experience is or what their real abilities are.
Right.
That I've brought on 2 reinvention coaches who we call the Covey reinvention coaches, and they really understand that topic. They do a lot of stuff with us. I have now a financial coach who's great, doesn't crowd any other people out. It's just, these are the people who I know I can trust. And if somebody comes in and says, I need help with X, I can direct them.
Right.
To that.
Yeah. And that's a great reference too for them, because I know that you said that all of the information and or tools that you provide on CoveyClub are well vetted. And I love
Yes.
that.
And that's one of the things that we do for making us different.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of sites out there, especially for older women, where people just allow anybody to post.
Mm.
They'll pay XYZ, they're a pharmaceutical company, they'll pay them
Right.
XYZ, and they just post all their junk. You
Yeah.
have no idea if it's good or bad or
Incredible.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We're really tough, and we screen, and because we don't take advertising, we take sponsorships, and it's all very well marked. But I'm very careful if it's something that sounds specious to me. People approach me all the time. I got this, hot flash serum. I've got
Oh,
this, and it's like, you know what?
no.
If I don't feel good about it, I'm not going to take your money anyway. So
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Well, I can bet you get approached by a lot. So moving on, I know
Mhm.
you've touched on this a little bit, but is there a vision and a mission statement for CoveyClub?
Yes, we are the online, offline platform for women 40 plus.
Mm,
And it's for sharing and for lifelong learners who want to find new friends and business partners. It's both friendship and business. As you get older, what you find is that business and friendship can merge. And
yes.
especially once you get out of corporate life, it really can merge.
Mm,
And, you don't know what you're going to meet people through us, through virtual, through live. And through being in, we have an app which is called Covey Connect, where we have a couple hundred people
mm,
who are talking, just like a private Facebook page, but nobody's gathering your data. It's all private. And people are talking in there about various things. You can meet people who are near you. You can meet people across the country, around the world, who can help you with what you need help with, or who
right.
might hook up with you to be a friend. I mean, two people, like, I found out we're talking French to each other because one was in California, one was in New York. And I said, "Oh, I see you guys have struck up a friendship. What do you do?" She's like, "Oh, I had no idea Laura likes to speak French too. And so do I. And I hadn't found anybody to do it. And so that's what we do." And I'm like, I would never have put that on the list, but
Right.
fabulous.
Yeah.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
So,
So
and,
connections.
and I don't care what the connection is. I just like the connection. And
Yes.
I
Yeah.
want people to find new friends. And that's the real honest magic, Jane, happens,
Mm-hmm.
the live events. When we took everybody to the spa,
Mm,
and I even found people who've been with me since the very beginning who I'd never met in person, but I knew them virtually like this. They would come to all the events. I would see their comments. And then to see them live, I felt like it was an old friend.
yeah.
And
It's like a
there's
big
something
family.
lovely. Yes,
Yeah.
there's something really lovely. And so I'm planning on, I think maybe by February of next year, we'll be able to start up again. And I moved down to New Orleans in September. And so I wanted to bring everybody down here for a very special event also. So
Mm.
I'm going to try to revive that. That was supposed to be actually, I think this week. Yeah, it was supposed to be on the 10th of June.
Wow. Well, that
Yeah.
sounds amazing. Yes, it's definitely a place where, like you said, can connect,
Oh,
learn.
it's so much fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And you have that, what I call a game-changing philosophy for women building their future in life and in business. And it's about the power of reinventing yourself and the plan that
Absolutely.
goes with it. Tell us
Mm-hmm.
about that, because I love that philosophy.
Well, I just believe it ain't over till you say it's over. There's no fat woman singing. Nobody else is going to tell you. You decide. If you
Mhm.
want to work till the day you drop dead at your desk, that's up to you. Nobody should tell you. Nobody should tell you because you turned 52 that you're done, or your ideas don't count, or you should just go away and hide. And who are all these people who are telling me how to live my life and tell me that I should, wear this or wear that, or I should cover my neck up because it's getting stringy, or just frankly, screw all of them.
I love it. Yeah,
I mean,
right.
who's to tell me all of this stuff? And,
Yeah.
and if you want to, I have some people who say, well, I don't need to work, but I like to work. It's like, fine. You don't have to say you don't need to work. If you like to work, you should work, and you should have work that you love and that, inspires you and gets you out of bed in the morning. And this whole notion that, and I think it's a generational thing, I'm like the bottom of the baby boomer. I don't really relate to the older baby boomers because they like had a different experience. They had Woodstock, they had Vietnam War. I was at the very bottom, sort of almost Gen X. And I just don't understand this idea of what is this thing about you're going to retire from life? Like, why would you do that? Like, you're all plugged in your whole life and then you're going to suddenly take the plug and walk away? Why would you? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense. I just don't understand the idea, the concept of not wanting to participate. And I think most of the clubbers who join me, that's why we call us lifelong learners, are always interested in developing themselves, finding new things, finding new ways to be creative, finding new ways to give back, finding new ways to feel that they are self-fulfilled, that they are giving to their community, that they are getting something back, that they feel loved, that they feel seen, that they feel validated.
Right.
And that doesn't end because you turn a certain age. So again, that I just say it ain't over till you say it's over.
So right, exactly. It's not until you say it's over, and whatever that could be for you. But you're right.
Yeah, and if you want to go to the beach and just hang at the beach and never talk to a corporate person again or talk to anybody about business again, that's your decision too. I'm not knocking that. It's just whatever you decide.
Exactly.
And we're here to help you find out what those next steps are, and whatever that is, we want to help you on that path.
I love that. So CoveyClub is there to help you for your next step, your next chapter.
Yes, your next chapter.
Most brilliant chapter of your life.
Well, it is. It is. Don't you think? Because
absolutely. Yeah.
You don't care anymore. You don't care what people think.
And you've got and you've gone through ups and downs, and maybe you can share with others what you've learned along the way, or like you said, make new friendships, and then there's a connection, or take up art.
Yes. Yeah. You also are more calm in yourself. Like people are talking about post-COVID, is this going to be worse for older people? I think, look, people, they always operate against their better needs anyway. But if you're running a corporation, it might do you well to hire some people with experience because they've been through this before. Not a pandemic, but they've been through bad times and they know how to get through it. Whereas if you focus solely on people, who are cheap to hire because they're young, they may be running around like a chicken with their head cut off because they've never seen this.
Exactly.
And so there's a lot of value out there to have, to have a little tread, worn tread on the tire. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
It's all perspective. So I wanted to move on to branding because I think this is something that we, especially as entrepreneurs or even for ourselves. So you say it's important for women to always be working on their brand.
Yes.
Especially when we're entrepreneurs and or own our own business or even ourselves, really.
Right.
Funny enough, although we know that, some of us have no idea what that really
is.
And can you tell us what branding is all about and why it's a critical element in today's marketplace? Because you're coming from an industry where branding is everything. So can you unpack that for us?
Well, having a personal brand, it's one of these horrible words that, like, what the heck does that mean? I understand the branding of my phone. I get that. I understand what Apple's about. I get it. Look at this, this is the Swell bottle. I get that. Right. But what about me? Like, why do I need that? What does it matter? And it's really because of the way that the work world has broken down. And, when I went to work, my first job, at one point was my third job. I was at Vogue magazine as a copywriter. And basically in those days, you thought you went to Vogue and you would die at Vogue. That's what you did. You were a Vogue girl, right? And you were never going to leave. Why would you leave? It was like you'd woken up at Cartier and like, why would you leave there? And many, many people never left, and they're still there to this day. And I've gone on and done all these other things, and that's okay. But it's because they didn't know how to create their own brand. The brand was coming from the outside. I work for Vogue, or I work for IBM, or I work for Google, or they couldn't develop who they were. When the marketplace opened up and you became an individual entrepreneur and an individual who had to move from company to company, and this largely started happening with the millennials, is that they took they're like little snails with their shell now, and they as much as we want to complain about them because they don't plug into a company and they don't stay for a long time and they don't have loyalty, blah, 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 blah. In many ways, they understand the world better than we did, which is we would hang around for 22 years while someone downsized you and pushed you off into HR and, humiliated you and did all this stuff to you because you were so loyal to this brand because you were that person.
You're almost the identity of
you took it on from where you worked. And
Exactly.
Now what you have to do is you have to, because that's all broken down and people don't stay at a place for 30 years, 20 years, you're there for 2 years, wherever the heck you are. It must become, you have to come in front of it because you can't be a Google girl for more than 2 years. I mean, you might look, somebody might work there for 10 years, but the chances are the way things are moving and churning and things are developing, the way I look at it is I say, if you get a 2-year run at any place today, you're in luck.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be your own brand. You don't have a choice. So when you're putting your social media out there, when you're putting your LinkedIn out there, when you're putting, yourself out there for interviews, you're like a million other names out there. How does anybody know who you are and how you differ? When we all stayed within our companies and we were there, we worked our way up in that little triangle, right? You'd go in the middle of that bottom fat triangle and then you'd work your way up, zigzag your way up to the tippy top or as close as you could. People knew who you were.
Yes.
But they don't know who you are. So how do you distinguish yourself? So that's why you're forced into having a personal brand. And then once you become an entrepreneur, you must have a personal brand. I mean, and there are all kinds of silly things we talk about that you can do, from you can be the lady. I mean, look at Dr. Burks with her scarf. She's a perfect example. Like she was just, the COVID doctor, right? But we kept looking at her saying, but she's the lady with the scarf.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. You're right. She always wore scarves. I actually pointed that out to my husband. I said, she always wears a scarf.
Brilliant branding. Either she's a brilliant brander or somebody she went to said, you need something that makes you stand out. Do you know the scarf had its own Instagram page?
Did it really?
Yes.
Oh my God.
That's what
idea.
That's what branding's about. Like
Wow.
we may not, it's terrible to say, but because everything is in a market today, you're in a market. You're the girl who always wears green. You're the girl who always wears, flower prints. There's a girl from Vanity Fair, and I'm not remembering her name, but she does all the circuits on the shows. She was talking about, she was the expert on Cohen during the Trump trials. And she would show up all the time in these girly, flowery things. And I would look at her and I would think God, it's so unsophisticated. She looks pretty, but just so super unsophisticated. And she was really smart. But she would wear this same, but I remembered her because, she's the girl with the floral she always showed up in these girly little printy things. And, is interesting branding. So that's what branding's all about, that we know before you open your mouth who you are. And you can play games with brands. Like she looked like she was a very girly girl and she wasn't at all. So she was kind of messing with your head in a way.
Yeah, she was deceiving.
Right. Right. And some people do that on purpose. They do that to disarm the people who fall for stereotypes.
Right. Right.
And, or you could be Steve Jobs, the guy. Oh, what do we know about Steve Jobs? Wire rim glasses, black turtleneck and jeans. Mm-hmm. You don't even know what he does. You know how he looked, right?
Right. Right. So because we all have our own essence. We all have our own voice and we all have our own style. And you're right, because especially when you're an entrepreneur, you are your brand.
Oh, you are your brand.
Especially. Yeah, because you're right. You are your brand. So,
and it's helpful. It's helpful for distinguishing yourself in this world of where you literally have less than a nanosecond to catch someone's attention.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, it
So
really is.
what is that about you that stands out? You know, you could be the person with the big rim glass. Maybe you wear funky glasses. It doesn't always have to be visible.
Right.
Visible is an easy thing to do. It could be that you always sing before you do something, or, I mean, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But
Something
those are the things.
uniquely yours. But that's a great overall explanation of branding, because I think that that's something that is very helpful for us, and certainly all of the women who might be looking to make a pivot in their life today. So you mentioned that the magazine industry created a consumer with expectations that are now outdated. And with that in mind, how important is it to remain relevant and creative in business and in life, and any suggestions how to get there?
Well, I think, look, the pace, you have to realize the pace of work has changed.
Mm-hmm.
I often give a presentation showing, my husband's father was kind of like Mr. Chips. He was a coach at a university. He went to that university. He stayed there until he died. And he got the gold watch. He got the whole thing. I've worked at 7 places in my lifetime. And then my son, who is 29, he's expected to have, I think it's like something like 9 jobs before he turns 30.
Yes.
And
the new norm.
the speed of new jobs, the speed of things don't, we just think of fashion trends, because I come out of the fashion world.
Mm-hmm.
When I started at Vogue, a fashion trend, short hair, long hair, whatever it was, somebody's going to, do, puffy shoulders or shoulder pads. That went on for years in the beginning, years.
It did.
Now we can look at a trend, and I don't know if you're like me, but I'm like, oh, I really like that. I'll just wait it out. It'll be gone by next season. It doesn't matter.
If you kept your stuff long enough, bell bottoms are coming back.
And it'll circle back, but it'll circle back so fast.
Yes.
Things have just sped up, largely because of communications, largely because of the internet, largely because we're international, largely because of the world being in on this. And so you can't expect that you're going to have one long, point of view on anything. You have to keep up. You must keep changing.
Mm-hmm.
And what you really find is that for women who are 40 plus, and if you're in the 60 plus area, there is a digital divide. And because I didn't grow up with a computer in my hand. I remember going in and typing at Vogue. I'd go in at 5 a.m. and I'd close the door, and there were no security, and I would go into this big building by myself.
Yep.
And I would use this typewriter. I had an electric, because I made them give me an electric, but they originally gave me a non-electric. And I went to my boss, one of those old black things, which you would see in a museum today. Yeah. And because I'm a wise ass, I went into my boss and I said, oh, did you see that there's a DP etched on the side of this typewriter? And she said, oh, really? Because Dorothy Parker had worked there. She's a very famous comedy writer. And I said, no, but it could have. This thing is from like the 1940s, and this is the 70s. I need at least an electric typewriter. I can't do this work.
Oh, I remember when those came, they were just...
Oh, it's such a big deal. Remember that? And then I had to change everybody's tape, because they didn't know how to change the tape.
Yeah, the whiteout. Yeah,
the whiteout tape, right? So I had to teach everybody, and they couldn't do it. So there is a digital divide still of people. And again, because things move so fast, you need, if you want to be present today, if you want to be part of what's going on, you have to have what's called, I'm sure you've heard this, a growth mindset, right? You've always got to be open to learning new things. You've always got to be open to being interested in new things, following things that interest you. That's the way that you stay young. That's the way you stay relevant. To me, that's the joy of life. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I moved after 24 years out of New York to New Orleans, is I wanted to drop myself down into a place where I would have butterflies every day in my stomach going, what's new that's out there? And just going to the supermarket. Well, just going to the supermarket down here is so interesting. I've never seen 99% of these brands.
Wow.
And I find that fascinating, and I want to try everything, and I want to see how that works. And, you know, and I get fooled a lot. I went to buy, it was hilarious because I went to buy some, you know, San Marzano tomatoes, and I was using my northern head, and I bought the thing, and then I was ready to use it, and I looked at the label, and it was like roasted tomatoes. And I'm like, who would roast them in the can? I never thought about that. We don't see that up north.
Really?
But yeah, it was like, I had never, you know, in a regular old can that looked like just regular old tomatoes.
Yeah.
So, but I find that so fascinating. And that's to me the joy of life, is that you're finding new mustards, you're finding new, and if you can keep that spirit alive in your life, that's how I think you live a very fulfilling life. And that is what I try to do. And if it's going back to school later in life, and it doesn't have to be going back and getting your master's, I highly encourage, you know, I took a calligraphy course just before I came down here at the high school. I wanted to learn how to do calligraphy. It's so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah.
Never, of course, I found out that no one can teach a left-handed person how to do calligraphy. And I was on my own. That was really fun. But it was so interesting to be back in a situation after, that was like, I would say 60 years since I'd been in, maybe 30 years since I'd been in a situation where being left-handed was a problem.
Right.
I'd not been in any situation for years. As a kid, you always had the problem with the desk and your writing and all that. And that went away when typewriters came and computers. And then suddenly I was back in with somebody who couldn't show me, you know, she sent me to videos, you know, and I learned. Yeah. But the learning and I find that's the beauty of life to me, is always learning, always finding new things, always being excited about something new or different. Like that's the heartbreaking part about being down in New Orleans while we're in this shutdown, is because every weekend, every night, there's something new here. Every weekend is the Creole Tomato Fest, the Beignet Fest, the that. There's Tennessee Williams, you know, a whole festival about Tennessee Williams. Like, that's what I came down here to do, was to immerse myself in all that stuff. And of course, it got all shut up and turned off. Wow. It'll come back.
It'll shut back on, or come back on.
Yeah, it'll come back. But because I find that so interesting, and I find it's like candy. I just find it so interesting.
It's having that sense of curiosity.
Yes.
Like when you're a child, everything is new. Yes. Even a blade of grass is like, that's right. Oh, look at this. You know, that's my little nephew, when he was a baby, now he's a full-grown man in his 20s. Right. But yeah, I take him out to the backyard, and he would just be awestruck by a butterfly, by the grass, by, you know, wind blowing the trees. It's that sense of curiosity, and have that not only in your life, but in your business, because I think that'll help you see more opportunity. And, you know, find, like you said, you had that vision of somebody guest editing the magazine, where, you know, just because you're thinking without the box, not even outside of the box.
Right, without it. You have to think, well, in the publishing business, to be any good, you really did have to think without it. Because, look, there were a lot of people doing a lot of the same things, and a lot of people who had a lot more money to do it with than I did. So you had to figure out ideas that were interesting and that would draw people to you.
And I think because you're aware of that as well, your background, that's one of the reasons that CoveyClub will become so special. Because, yes, because you have that awareness, but you also have that sense of play and curiosity.
Yes, there is a sense of play. Yes. And so, for instance, while we do things like, you know, we bring in a LinkedIn expert to work on your LinkedIn, and a sleep expert. I'm so excited. I finally have this great sleep expert I'm really excited about coming up to talk about sleep, because that's our number one topic, because you can't get it, is we're going to do sourdough. We found somebody who's like a sourdough expert, and because during the pandemic, everybody wanted to know how to do sourdough starter. That's the one. I bake bread. I do all that. I don't know how to do sourdough. I have no idea if anybody's going to sign up. And I said to them, sign up. If not, we won't do any more cooking, but maybe you want to. I have no idea. Let's try it. And so I think that's the joy, for me, the joy of having your own business and being an entrepreneur is when you were in corporate, when I was in corporate, if I had that idea about like, oh, maybe we should try a cooking thing because I ran into this woman who can do sourdough starter. This would be a 6-month journey.
Oh my
up
gosh.
through
And by the time you get to it,
it's over. The trend is over.
Yeah.
You're out of the pandemic. No one cares. Right?
We're done.
Like, gone. But that was what it was like. And, you know, it was literally these lumbering elephants. And what I love is I have an idea. You and I are talking. I have an idea now. I'll execute it as soon as we get off here. I love that freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah. So I think it's a must-have in life as well, because that's something that keeps us young. And now switching gears, I read something that you said that I thought was so clever. Of course it would be, because it's coming from you and you have that sense of play. And you said that the male magazine editors never got that fashion was our sport, being women. So is that how you approach finding a new look for yourself? I was just curious because I love that statement. I love it.
Well, I'll just tell you, it used to irritate me because what happened is, even though women's magazines sold more and brought in more money by leagues, I want to say at least 50% more, maybe more than that. It might have been 70% in terms of their value to these publishing companies. They were always put down by the men in the business on the editorial side, because it was always like, well, the reason why they bring in so much money is because they just do junk. They just cater to this, you know, junky, crappy, they put out crap, and we don't put out crap. There was always this snottiness about men. And we would have these awards. There were these industry awards, which were called the ASMEs, American Society of Magazine Editors. And it was a sexist problem where women's magazines for years, these awards were started, I can't remember, in the 30s, 40s, whatever. Women's magazines never won any awards, none, zero. I'm talking about 0 awards up until the last 15 years when there were pushes put on they couldn't even get noticed. Oh, and what was so infuriating is you would open up a category. So when you would crunch the numbers and go, hey, wait a minute, we're producing 70% of all revenue in this industry, and you give us 0 ability to achieve anything of merit, and it's all going to men's magazines. What is this about? And so they would open up categories to try to oh, okay, well, you guys do service. Let's see, we'll give a service award. And then the men would come in and they would literally, because you would break off into these little groups, and they would literally sit there and say to us, the women in the room, well, you know, that may be a good breast cancer article, but you guys always do breast cancer anyway, so it's not a big deal. Oh. But they would then turn around, and this has actually happened, they would give an award to a men's magazine that did a story about a man having breast cancer. Oh. And I got so angry about this divide and this double standard and the way they looked down on fashion magazines. Well, first, the funny part of that one, I actually went back to when that guy got nominated for that, I went back to my staff and I said, okay, I am so pissed off right now. Go find me a woman that has testicular cancer. We're gonna win this thing. I was just so angry. I was like, this is so stupid. And they would co-opt everything that we did, and they would win awards for it because they would denigrate what we did. And so at a certain point, I finally said, and magazines like Outside Running Magazine would win awards. And all the sports magazines, Sports Illustrated, oh my God, an award every year, the top, but they would never look at the fashion magazines are just garbage. And I used to sit there and say, guess what? Sports, my sport is fashion and beauty.
Yes.
Your sport is something, it's the same thing. You
Yeah.
cannot denigrate us. It's the same exact thing.
Right.
And then they would be like, oh, well, the writing's different. But it's like, no, it's not. Actually, it's not. It was just a way of owning all these awards and not letting women in.
Right. Right. Well,
So
but
that's how I got to it.
right. But I thought it was very clever. I mean, I love the way you phrased it. So just.
Well, it is. I mean, when you think of our, you know, not for everybody, but you know, look, I love very serious things. I love politics. I love all that, but I love a, you know, good pair of shorts when I can find it. I love a great handbag. I love a great pair of shoes. I love a great lipstick. I'm a fragrance-aholic.
Oh yeah, me too.
What's the difference between that and, you know, getting in line and painting your face for some game?
Yeah. I'm with you.
But anyway, it was always denigrated because it was female.
Yeah. Well, that's our sport. So I like our sport.
Good.
Can I tell you?
The sport of fashion.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. So as online entrepreneurs, because that's where we live our world today, many of us aim for those Google Analytics. And I read something that you had talked about earlier in an interview, and I thought it was fascinating because you said, we're led to believe that it's a measure of our business success, the analytics. But I found it interesting how you said that the goal for CoveyClub is one of engagement, not one based on clicks, which is dumbing down content, not building a real community.
Right.
So just give us some insight into that perspective, because that really hit home for me. I was like, wow, that is very insightful.
Well, you have to decide what it is you're going to do. And the number one thing is I decided Covey had to be a business. If I was going to do a charity for women like me, it's not going to be this. I will do a real charity for women who really need it. You know, my group is executive women, managerial, CEOs, CMOs, all that. We're well off. You don't need a charity. So it has to be a real business. And now I just lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? Where'd it go?
Content versus engagement.
Oh yeah. So the idea was again, being in magazines, engagement was not measured. It was always, as soon as we got, well, it was always sale. You were measured on how you sold at the newsstand. They didn't measure you on how you did subscription wise, which again made no sense. Because if somebody really loved your product, they would probably take a subscription, but they didn't care. It was always they wanted you to buy. They wanted people to, it was so crazy. You were measured on getting people to buy the most expensive item, but that would appeal to the less loyal people. Was newsstand. Newsstand was you made more money, so that's why they wanted you to get the newsstand to sell, but never measured on subscriptions, which made no sense. Like, I mean, you and I both know if you like something, I take a subscription, right? Yes. That shows my loyalty. And what they would do, as soon as you subscribe, do you know what they would do to you in circulation? They denigrated the value, the magazine that you actually got. They changed your paperweight. They took it down so it would be cheaper to mail. They took off all the varnish off the cover. That's why the cover looked cheaper and crappier. Like they started treating their most loyal customers the worst.
The worst. Oh boy.
It never made any sense to me. Like, why are you doing that? I don't understand. These are the people who've stepped up and said, I love your product. So when I got out to do this, number one is we saw what's going on with clickbait out there. And my example was the Huffington Post. I remember stopped reading the Huffington Post after I clicked on 20 articles that would have a great headline, and then it would be 3 lines under it with no news. It was just garbage. It was just total garbage, whatever it was. And I don't have time for that. There's too much content out there. And I decided, in order to do that kind of big media thing like that, you would have to be, the big magazines put out 20 articles a day, like Elle Magazine, 20 articles online a day. Okay, do we really believe these are quality items? What do you think?
Yeah.
It's junk. So, but you're just churning stuff out there to get somebody to click on your headlines so that you can say to the advertiser, look, we got 10% more clicks. You need to pay more.
See, that's the hit and run customer though.
Right,
You know, that's
right.
what I used to call it, the hit and run. So you get them to
Right.
hit and then they leave.
Right.
Yeah.
You are going after the person who you are not servicing. You're going after the person who doesn't like you the most. You're going after the person who likes you the least. The whole thing makes no sense to me. So I decided, we have our Google Analytics and we're going to stay within a certain range that we like. And we're not going to try to ramp up and get advertising. First of all, the advertising model is broken. Second of all, I don't want to have to run, Burn Belly Fat, which was our best selling click at More. I don't want to have to run it every 6 months. And I used to it more. I would have to go to my health editor, who was a really great health editor, and say, I need a burn fat faster belly thing for this month. And she'd go, there's no news. And I'd go, well, you got to make news. We got to find it because we need those clicks. And that's a horrible way to run a business, right?
Yeah.
Because you're trying to be the authority. You're trying to make sure that you distinguish yourself by being the real item. You can't do both. You either go for clickbait and you abandon all responsibility, or you are going to be true to who you are. So I decided, let me be true to who we are. And we are doing only one great article. And we don't care if it gets 100 clicks, 1,000 clicks, 10 clicks. We're going to do the thing that's right for us. We have a good range. We have 30,000 uniques a month. Every now and then somebody will post something and it'll go up to 60,000. That's fine. But I'm not going to prostitute CoveyClub for a click. There's no point. What's the point? You don't need me to flood you with 20 shitty articles a day. No. You really don't. You've got that. And you're actually unsubscribing from that, so.
Right. And quality supersedes quantity.
That's right. And I want to be quality.
Exactly. And what you get, like you said, is you make an impact and then you get the engagement.
Right. So, and we want people to use the content, to be more curious about who we are, to join us in Covey Connect, which is our private app, or to join us at an event, a live event, or a virtual event. We want to actually bring you into community. And not everybody wants to do that. Look, there's probably maybe 30% of the people who want to get involved that way. And then there's a lot of people who just rather read and they want to stay on the outskirts or whatever. That's fine too. But we really want to create that inner circle where you feel like your life can be transformed. And now when I hear my members come to me, and this has particularly happened in the pandemic because of all the things we've been doing that are virtual events and special events and, journaling half days and all this stuff. People have started sending me notes saying, I couldn't have gotten through this pandemic without CoveyClub. Thank you for having it. Or, when I would say, well, I've got to restructure this, and they'd be like, well, tell me how, because I don't want this to go away. This is so important to me. And we're just, we're finally finding those things that people respond to, and we are here for them, and they know we're here for them, and they can trust us and rely on us, and they come to us to grow now.
I love that.
And that's really one of the things that you can do with us. You can come and grow. Yeah,
you're really tapping into that community, which is, like you said, it's one of the goals of CoveyClub, but it really sounds like you said during this period, it's really coming together. You've had that opportunity. And speaking of CoveyClub, you had written 3 steps that you recommend to reinvent yourselves. Now, I would love the audience to hear those, because I know that that's something that is very dear to your heart. And because that's sort of what has happened, and that what you're doing right now is reinventing yourself. And so what would those 3 steps be?
Well, the first one is financial. When anybody calls me and says, I get a lot of calls, unfortunately, that's why I'm trying to get people to come in 2 years before they think they want to change. But in the beginning, I'd started getting all the calls my first year in the 4th quarter, where I'd have friends going, I'm standing in the closet. I think I'm going to be, fired tomorrow. What do I do? You're the reinvention person. Can you help me? I'd be like, yes, but I wish we had started this conversation 2 years ago, because I've got all this stuff for you, but you needed to build it up, whatever. So try to always have a reinvention plan in your back pocket. And what I mean by that is another interest that you can cultivate on the weekends. It can be your hobby that you could eventually maybe turn into something that made money. I think none of us know today. Look at the pandemic. None of us know. Because I get this story all the time. Oh, I've been here 22 years. Everybody loves me. It's banking. It's really stable. I don't have to worry. Blah, blah. Yeah. And then I get the call a month later that, oh, we were bought by a bank in Alaska and everybody's going to Alaska and I don't want to go to Alaska. And it's like, it's not because of you. It's nothing to do with you. And the pandemic is the best example. It's to do with life today. It's unpredictable, completely unpredictable. You need to have some other ideas out there for you should your first choice disappear, evaporate, get shut down, get bought. And another thing that you've been cultivating along the way, it's kind of like what I was doing with my master's degree at Columbia. I was headed off in that direction. CoveyClub came in and intervened. And what you have to be doing is looking for those, and this comes from, and I don't even remember who said it to me, but from somebody I interviewed who was a really thoughtful reinventor. They said you have to be keeping your eyes open to look at all the reinvention possibilities that throw themselves in front of you every day, which is what they do. Every day we look at something, we look at a pen and we say, I wonder why this doesn't have, why it can't, do all colors, instead of just the one color. And then you put it down, you go, oh, if that was, if somebody wanted that, somebody would have done it. Well, that's not true. Yep. And I think you have to be thinking about all those things. And especially now, I believe we're at the beginning of what I call the great reinvention. I think everything is going to be reinvented. I think people are looking as kind of hits on what you were talking about earlier. I don't think everybody's going to go back and get back on that hamster wheel.
No,
I think so. I think people feel differently. Like this whole slowdown, this smell the grass, look at the flowers, look at the corners of your house, like your apartment, right? Look at the, but I mean, right. But I think the little things like, going for a walk, talking to a friend during the day, baking something.
Yes.
Eating at home.
Flour anyway.
Right. In many ways, that has brought us back to, nobody voluntarily gets off the hamster wheel. Number one, because they're paid too much to be on it. Number two, it has its own momentum. It has a kind of endorphin releasing thing of I'm so busy. Yes. I wake up in the morning and then by the end of the day, I'm done and I'm like, I can finally go to sleep because I'm so exhausted. And every day is like that.
It's true.
Right. Every day is like that. When you've been forced off the hamster wheel the way we are, I think people are saying, why did I commute an hour and a half? Why did I blow my hair every morning? Why did I wear high heels every day? Why did I mean, there's a lot of why did I? Why didn't I? This has been for some, a joy to be around my little kids more than I was before. I'm to have, a real conversation with so-and-so. I'm hoping that people are going to slow it down, take the things from this experience that enriched their lives and use those ideas to explore new avenues for them and make them more happy. And I think also the high relief, and I'm just going to be really honest here, the high relief of saying, holy shit, I could be dead in 9 days if I catch this thing. Am I doing what I want to do? Like with if these were my last 9 days on earth, do I really want to be on the hamster wheel?
Yes.
Is that do I want to die in the hamster wheel? Maybe not. So
maybe I can get off.
I just think there's so much more to life. And I hear a lot of people who don't want to do that again. And people who want to live a slower life, a more thoughtful life. I don't know whether we'll stick with this. I have no idea. But because remember, we can't just jump back on the hamster wheel anyway. This is going to take some time. So, I'm hoping that people will look for more joy, more meaning, a slower pace that will let them not be so frantic and let them actually do the connecting, do the thought thinking that they need to do and they want to do.
Yes. Yes. I think that's what maybe the time is granting us, if we're there and open to letting it in.
Right.
Letting it
and
in.
yeah. And so, and then in the answer to your other things that you need to do, we often talk about creating your kitchen cabinet, which is another good way to get started, which is collect people from various points in your life. You need to get, if you have somebody from grade school, grab that person, junior high, high school, early jobs, bring them in, crack open the rosé, get pizza, get whatever they'll eat, and get yourself a whiteboard and ask them, what do you remember about me? How would you describe me? What are 5 adjectives or 3 adjectives you would use? And then start building this list of, because a lot of those people will remember, you really used to love, you were, do you remember you really loved chemistry class when blah, 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 blah. And you're like, really? Because what happens is, as children, because we're trying to find that thing we're supposed to do, look, we all thought we were going to be the prima ballerina until we realized that we definitely weren't going to be hired by the ABT, right? Even though at 6, that's what I wanted. So you start to narrow down your world, and your world becomes narrow, 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 narrow. All this stuff has been gotten rid of. When you get to this point in your life, you have the opportunity to go back and say, well, I'm a lawyer. I always wanted to, and this is somebody I'm thinking of, who wanted to be a musician. She left and she became a musician. And then she went back to law because she found musician's life was too hard. But she found a way to merge the two in her adult life.
Right.
But you sometimes need to go back to find out the things that other people remember about you, because you've lost that thread. Right. And you're looking for those memories of, you used to sew stuff for, I'm thinking to myself, I used to sew Barbie clothes. Like, it's like, and I got great joy out of that. Yes. Would that be something that should be brought back into my life now? Maybe not, but maybe.
Yeah. 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 They help trigger some things that you may not have thought of.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes it's those old joys and those old interests that can bring you a new joy because they are redone in a new way. Mm-hmm. It's like marine biology, which I totally loved in my 20s, but I ended up being a writer, is now basically sustainability management. And so I was able to go back, get tremendous amount of joy out of going back to an old interest that I'd abandoned, but in a new way.
Right. Right. Yeah. So those are wonderful. Yeah. I love that. Always have a reinvention plan in your pocket.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Totally. And work on it and have some money put away. And what I say also is put away a year's worth of salary that you could survive on. And if you never need it, if you never use it, if your company loves you and you stay there for 30 years and you get the minivan or whatever the heck they give you at the end, good for you. Go buy yourself a big toy with that money. But you should have it just in case. And too many people, they bury their head in the ground. They don't see what's coming. They don't want to see it. It's too hard. It's too scary. They don't. And I've had people say to me, especially men, I've had them say to me, oh, well, you're so creative. You always had other interests. I have no other interests. This is the only thing I know. And I'm like, that's not true. You have other interests. You're just not thinking about it. And you're not letting yourself explore that. Nobody has just an interest in finance. I mean, come on.
Right.
So there are other things that interest you. You're just not digging in.
Well, thank you for those tips.
Sure.
And I just wanted to ask you, what's the most exciting aspect of where you are in your life today?
I love the fact that I don't know where I'm going.
Oh, wow.
I love, as I, I am a voracious learner. And I find it just sounds so silly, but it does. It's just like, if I can find something new to learn about, it's like a tickle in my brain. I know it sounds so cheesy, but it does. It just is this weird thing where, you know, my neighbor gave me, there's people down here are so lovely and so nice. And she had an extra milkweed plant. And down here, all the monarchs come through here and they breed, the monarch butterflies. Beautiful. And I was admiring her monarch chrysalises. This is back in the spring. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. You can actually see them here. Can you, you know, call me when one of them emerges? So she gave me a plant. And of course, you know, then all the worms show up. It's like a whole, you know, like National Geographic event in my backyard, and I've got the worms. And you'll see if you go to my Instagram, I'm like doing fashion and politics and, you know, activism, and then I'm doing my butterflies.
Oh no!
But I love, you know, so I got a chance to like read up all about the monarchs and find out, you know, what phases they do and how you feed them and blah 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 and all this stuff. And I just find that exciting, just to go out in my backyard and see butterflies being born out there. I find that so fascinating. Mother Nature to me is so extraordinarily interesting.
I love it.
It's mysterious, it's magical, it's spiritual. So I think if you are always learning something, you will always have that sense of moving forward. And you will always have that sense of wonder, and you will always have that sense of renewal.
Yes.
Because it could just be a recipe. It could be finding a new recipe. It could, and again, you know, I spent an hour and a half in one of the supermarkets down here just looking at new brands. So it could be finding a new Creole mustard. To me is it's like a, you know, digging treasure out of a, you know, sandy heap somewhere. Right. I'm like, wow, look at this. This is what people eat, and I got to try it.
Yeah.
So
treasure everywhere. So it's really, just, you love that every day is a new day, and that, you know, you don't know what's coming next.
No. And I really enjoy that aspect.
That's a great attitude, I have to say, because a lot of us get stuck in our routines. And if we don't know what we're going to be doing the next day or the next month, we get all.
It creates anxiety for a lot of people.
Right.
You have to have a sense of adventure. And I will say that that's one thing people ask me about, you know, getting older and all that stuff. I think you have to cultivate and maintain a sense of adventure.
Absolutely. I agree.
It will that's what keeps you young, is if you are always up for something. And it's funny because people will say to me, when I say, I don't know why I'm doing this, whatever, and then people will comment, they'll be like, oh, you were always up for doing something new. And I was like, I was? Really? I feel like it's just now. But if you have a sense of adventure, then life every day can be an adventure.
Yes, absolutely.
Routines are good. Look, we need the routines to get out the door. When I had 2 little kids and, you know, a husband that worked full time and a big job where I had to be in New York at 5 a.m. sometimes. I mean, just getting out the freaking door was a major miracle. So, but now we have, you know, and that required all kinds of routines just to make it happen. But when you have more time and you have a change coming, or you see a change coming, or you feel a change coming, if you can break out of your routine, that's how you find new things that interest you and new things that are very special in your life.
Yes. I love it. So where can people find you, Lesley?
So I'm all over. You can follow me. I'm, you know, Lesley Seymour. And the difference is it's Lesley Seymour, Seymour. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. And of course, we have CoveyClub, which has its own sites as well. Come to CoveyClub.com, visit us there. I also have my podcast, which is called Reinvent Yourself with Lesley Jane Seymour, and that is everywhere. We're approaching our 100th interview.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, and we interview people who've been there, done it from every angle, and it's not just career. It can be your body, your marriage, your health, I mean, I've literally interviewed so many people. You can dig through we do very deep interview notes, so you can find if you're interested and just listen to the ones you're interested in. And they are giving you not just inspiration, but they're giving you steps and real practical things. And also I interview people who are creating platforms for women to reinvent themselves. And these are all women 40 plus.
Yes.
My interest is because everybody talks to 20-year-olds about what they're doing, and they stop talking to us as if we died. And we didn't. We're still here, as I said. It's not over till you say it's over.
Yeah, exactly. It's not over till we say it's over. So I have 4 final questions that
Oh my goodness. Okay.
are going to test your imagination and creativity, which will be fun for you.
Okay.
But just moving out of the box because we are at the epic vision zone. So if your life were an epic story, what would the title be?
An epic story.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my life is an epic story. I don't know. I have no idea. Persistence wins the day. I have no idea.
That's
Pretty persistent person. Mm-hmm.
Persistence wins the day. What name would you give your character in your epic story?
Oh man, these are tough questions.
I was hoping they'd be fun, but
yeah. But you got to remember, I'm a writer, so these are they're not fun. They're tough. I have no clue. I have no idea. I don't know. Priscilla Persistence. I have no idea.
Oh, that's good.
No idea.
That's good. I love it. How would you characterize your epic life?
I mean, I feel like I kind of had an epic life because I did so much better than, I know that I hate to say this because I'm sure some feminists would say, you didn't dream big enough, or you shouldn't admit that you didn't dream big enough. But, I always wanted to do something with myself, and I always hoped I would. And in actuality, I worked really hard. It wasn't all easy. But I did way more than I thought I would. So I'm very, very grateful. And I feel like, I did some crazy stuff. I did stuff in Hollywood. I traveled the world with Mrs. Obama. There's a kind of crazy stuff to it. So I kind of had an epic life. And I just think you just have to have the imagination to go with it and let it take you sometimes. If you try to direct it too much, it won't happen. Mm-hmm. Kind of, again, it's very much like the entrepreneurial thing that I said to you is you've got to be watching for those opportunities that drop themselves in front of you. Because you can't, if you live like this, you'll never see them because they're in the periphery, and then they drop in and you've got to say, oh, I want to do that.
Right.
And never let go of, and never really, you can't be afraid to fail. I've failed many, many times before I got my first editor-in-chief job. I tried for a bunch of magazines that I couldn't get. I just couldn't get them. I'd never been in, the old classic, well, you've never been an editor-in-chief, so you can't be one. It's like, okay, well, somebody's going to give you at some point, someone has to let you
there lies the persistence.
Right.
Yes.
So,
yes.
So
you are living your epic
keep at
life,
it.
Which is
kind of.
Which is great. And the one last question, hopefully not as difficult as the others.
Okay. All right.
If you had an epic superpower, what would it be and why?
Wow, you're talking about today. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of a huge upheaval. If I had an epic superpower, I would take control of this whole thing and bring peace and health to everybody. It has just been, frankly, a couple of years from hell. And I think we need to have another way of looking at it. It's just so difficult. Mm-hmm. And it would be nice to put us on a different footing.
Right. Well, that's beautiful. Beautiful. So thank you, Lesley.
Great. Thank you, Jane.
For coming on the show.
Good.
Sharing your insight, your knowledge, inspiration with us about the power of reinventing ourselves and proving that it's never too late to live a brilliant life doing what you love.
Never too late.
Never too late. And Lesley and I would love to hear from you. So go on over to my Facebook page and write a comment. Tell us what your epic takeaway was from this conversation. And remember, this is where you imagine, create, and build a life and business doing what you love. Until next time, this is the Epic Vision Zone. Thank you so much.